Chapter 7 of A Mysterious Disappearance by Louis Tracy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Carolyn. In the city. Messrs. Dodge & Co. of Leadenhall Street possessed business premises of greater pretensions than Bruce had pictured to himself from Mrs. Hillmer's description of their transactions with her brother. Not only were their offices commodious and well situated, but a liberal display of gold lettering, intermingled with official brass plates, marking the registering offices of many companies, gave evidence of some degree of importance, whether fictitious or otherwise Bruce could not determine as he scrutinized the exterior of the building on the following morning. Moreover, workmen were even then busy in substituting the title Dodge, Son and Company Limited for Messrs. Dodge & Company, the suggestive nature of the latter designation having perhaps proved a stumbling block in the way of the guileless investor. When the barrister entered the office, a busy place, a hive of many clerks, and adorned with gigantic maps of the Rand, West Australia, Cripple Creek and Klondike, he asked for Mr. Dodge. His card procured him ready admission. He was shown into an elaborately upholstered apartment of considerable size. At the farther end, seated in front of a gorgeous American desk, was a young man who ostentatiously finished a letter and then motioned the barrister to a seat. Bruce was curious on the question of the age of the head of the firm. "Are you Mr. Dodge or the son?" he said, with the utmost gravity. The other was taken back by this unexpected method of opening the conversation. It annoyed him. "I am the representative of the firm, sir, and fully able to deal with your business whatever it may be," he replied. "No doubt, but it will simplify matters if I know exactly to whom I am addressing myself." After an uneasy shuffling in his seat, he could not guess what this keen-faced, earnest-eyed lawyer might want. The representative of Messrs. Dodge, Son and Company Limited explained that he was Dodge, and the name of the firm had been adopted for general purposes. "Then there is no son, I take it?" "Yes, there is, sir." This with a snort of anger. "How old is he?" "What the dickens has that got to do with it? Will you kindly tell me what you want, sir, as my time is fully occupied?" "Just now I want to know how old the son is." This calm persistence irritated Mr. Dodge beyond endurance. 3 years, confound you, and his sister is 4 months. Can I oblige you with any more details concerning my family affairs?" Having purposely raised this man to boiling point by this harmless method of examination, Claude tackled the real business in hand. He was quite sure that a financial sharper in a temper was far more likely to blurt out the truth than if he were approached in a matter-of-fact manner. "To begin with," he explained, never taking his eyes off the furious face of Mr. Dodge, "I have called to ask for information with regard to your dealings with Mr. Sidney H. Corbett of Raleigh Mansions, Sloane Square. I never heard of him in my life. You have evidently come to the wrong office, Mr. Bruce." "Are you quite sure?" "Well, nearly so. However, I can tell you in a moment, as it is impossible for me to carry every name connected with several companies in my memory." Mr. Dodge recovered his temper now that he saw a chance of disconcerting his caustic visitor. He touched an electric bell and told the answering youth to send Mr. Hawkins. "My correspondence clerk," he explained loftily when Hawkins entered. "Are we in communication with anyone named Sidney H. Corbett, Mr. Hawkins?" "No, sir." "Have you ever heard that name?" "No, sir." "That'll do. You may go. You say you have come to the wrong shop, Mr. Bruce." "Yes, so I see." The barrister kept looking at the back of Mr. Dodge's head, but made no move. Mr. Dodge became puzzled. "Now, Mr. Bruce," he cried, "you know the age of my son and the extent of my information about Mr. Corbett. Is there anything else in which I may be of service?" Yes. You do a great deal of underwriting, mostly for the flotation of gold mining companies? Yes. That is a branch of our business. I am interested in this class of undertaking, and I was given to understand that Mr. Corbett has had some dealings with you in a similar respect for a considerable sum of money. The name is absolutely unknown to me. Of course, so I gather. I am sorry to hear it. Several clients of mine have money to invest in that way, and I naturally came to a firm whose name apparently figured largely in the transactions of Mr. Corbett. It was good to see the manner in which Mr. Dodge metaphorically kicked himself for his previous attitude. His emotion was painful. For quite an appreciable time he could not trust his sentiments to work. At last he struggled to express himself. Really, Mr. Bruce, if you had only put things differently. Don't you see, it rather upset me when you came in and began yawling about the youngsters. And then you spring Mr. Corbett's name on me, a man of whom I have no sort of knowledge. It must have been my firm of which your friends heard. There is absolutely no other Dodge in Leadenhall Street. Indeed, we are the only financial Dodges. That is, Messrs. Dodge, Son & Company, Limited, are the only firm of the name dealing with financial matters in the city. By this time, Bruce had assured himself that Mr. Dodge did not know Mr. Corbett's identity, and if Mrs. Hilmer's brother had changed his name to conceal himself from Dodge, it was likely to be successful. Anyhow, I am here, Mr. Dodge, he said cheerfully, so I may as well enter into negotiations with you. Have you any good things in hand at this moment? Some of the best. We are just waiting for the market to ease a bit, and we shall have at least 5 splendid properties to place before the public. By the way, do you smoke? Bruce did smoke, and Mr. Dodge produced a box of excellent cigars. Then he warmed to his work. Here is the prospectus of the Golden Halo mine, capital £150,000, for which the vendors are asking £140,000 in cash, with a working capital of £10,000. The ore now in sight is estimated to produce 2 millions sterling, and the mine is not 1/10 developed. We are offering underwriters 10% in cash, and there is not the slightest risk, as the shares will stand at a high premium within a few days after the lists. It sounds most promising, said Bruce, but my principals are more interested in taking up concerns which have been already established, but in which, for want of sufficient capital, the vendors' shares have, in a process of reconstruction, come into the market. If you have anything of that kind— The very thing, interrupted Dodge excitedly. The Springbok mine will just suit him. After all is said and done, Golden Halos is a bit in the air between you and me, but the Springbok is a genuine article. It was capitalized for $250,000, and the directors went to allotment on a subscription list of about 14,000. This money has been expended, but twice the amount is necessary to develop the property properly. A call was made on the shares, but no one paid up, and there is talk of compulsory reconstruction. Believe me, money put into it now will yield 200% in dividends within 12 months. There is a whiff of scent on this trail, said Claude to himself. He added aloud, That looks promising. Can you give me details? By all means. Here is the original prospectus. Bruce glanced through the document, which dealt with the Springbok claims on the Rand, with more candor than is usually exhibited in such compilations. Judging from the reports of several mining engineers of repute, it really looked as if, this time, Mr. Dodge were speaking with some degree of accuracy. This reads well, said Bruce. What proportion of share capital is falling in on the reconstruction scheme? I hold 50,000 shares myself, cried Dodge, and though my money is locked up just now, I am so convinced about this mine that I will manage to pay the call myself. Roughly speaking, there are 150,000 shares to be underwritten at, say, 3 shillings each. And who are the present holders? The barrister asked the question in the most unconcerned way imaginable, yet upon the answer depended the whole success or otherwise of this hitherto unproductive mission. Mr. Dodge was manifestly anxious. "I take it that we are talking with a definite view of business," he said. The barrister hesitated. Even in the detection of crime, a man does not care to tell a deliberate lie, and Dodge's attitude so far had been candid enough. The Springbok mine honestly looked to be a good speculative investment, so he resolved to place the proposition before one or two friends who dealt with similar matters and who were fully able to look after their own interests. "Yes," he answered, "I am here for that purpose. If my principals like this thing, they will go in for it." "Then here is the vendors list," said Mr. Dodge, taking a foolscap sheet from a drawer. Claude perused it nonchalantly. His quick eyes took in each name and address out of a half dozen, and rejected all as being in no way connected with the man whose antecedents he was seeking. Yet, where possible, he left nothing to chance. "Have you any objection to a copy being made?" he asked. Mr. Dodge hummed doubtfully. "You see," went on the barrister, "it is best to be quite candid with people whom you wish to bring into risky, if apparently high promising, ventures. I presume these gentlemen are moneyless. If so, it is a factor in favor of your scheme. Should any of them be men of means, my principals would naturally ask why they did not themselves underwrite the shares." Mr. Dodge was convinced. "From that point of view," he cried emphatically, "they are above suspicion. Jot them down, sir." The barrister armed himself with the necessary documents, and they parted with mutual good wishes. It was only after reflection that Mr. Dodge saw how remarkably little he had got out of the interview. "He was a jolly smart chap," communed the company promoter. "I wonder what he was really after. And who the dickens is Mr. Sidney H. Corbett? Anyhow, the Springbok business is quite above board. How can I raise the wind for my little lot?" If Mr. Bruce had probed more deeply Mr. Dodge's holding, he would have been saved much future perturbation. But, clever as he was, he did not know all the methods of financial juggling practiced by experts on the stock exchange. A hansom brought him quickly to Portman Square. In fulfillment of his promise, he was about to place Sir Charles Dyke in possession of his recent discoveries. When the door of Wensley House opened, the butler, Thompson, who happened to be in the hall, anticipated the footman's answer to Bruce's inquiry. "Sir Charles left yesterday for Bournemouth, sir. He was that overcome by the weather and his trouble that he has gone for a few days' rest at the seaside. If you called, sir, I was to tell you would be glad to see you there, should you find it convenient to run down. And, sir, you'll never guess who came here this morning, as bold as brass. Jane Harding. Now how upon earth can you hit upon things in that way, sir? It was very self. And you ought to have seen her airs. 'Thompson,' says she, 'is Sir Charles at home?' 'No, he isn't,' says I. 'But you're wanted at the police station.' She was in a cab, and she had asked the butcher's boy to pull the bell, so him and the cabby laughed. 'Thompson,' she said, very red in the face, 'I'll have you dismissed for your impudence.' And off she went. Did you ever hear anything like it, sir?" "No, Thompson. Miss Harding is certainly a cool hand." Bruce walked to his chambers, and his stroll through the park was engrossed by one subject of thought. It was not Mrs. Hillmer, nor Corbett, nor Dodge who troubled him. What puzzled him more than all these was the impudence of Jane Harding. End of chapter 7.